Joshua, what record history are we talking about tonight?
All right. So this one,
need a minute to recalibrate?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because the way that we're no, this is good energy for it, because I think this segment is gonna push the boundaries of this series, or at least your taste, maybe.
Okay.
So
I'm ready.
I want to confess to being a secret metalhead.
Wow.
And, yeah. It's not a secret. It's just a thing that not many people know about me. And there's not a lot of, metal music that comes out of social movement moments. Although, actually, when I was a teen, I loved this band that I would see all the time called Catharsis. And their lyrics were anarcho-insurrectionary. And it was like this beautiful poetry and very energizing, but the most vapid politics. It was like it was like French situationists or like the Invisible Committee discovered double bass drum pedals and wanted to make music that sounded like, a well-orchestrated car crash.
That's actually okay. I got you. All right.
But I'd see them in basements. But I'm getting nostalgic, actually. But I didn't really actually listen to metal music until I got into my 30s. And I became dazzled with, the operatic range of symphonic metal, of the kind of guitar wizardry and epicness of power metal, the context specificness and like indigenous instrumentation of what's called folk metal. And, I think a lot about crisis, and sometimes you want to hear music that sounds like an entire paradigm collapsing around you. And so that's what this band sounds like. They are, the album is called Origins, and the band is called El Vitae, is how it's pronounced. And they are super interesting. They come from Switzerland, and they formed a number of years ago when they were connecting to their Gaulish roots. And so for folks who are not familiar, the Gauls were, a native tribe in Europe that was colonized by the Romans. And Gaulish is a dead language that they began to revive and reconstruct through this band. And so they sing in ancient Gaulish as well as English, and they use traditional instrumentation like a hurdy-gurdy, which is like a medieval instrument that sounds like bagpipes, and lutes and flutes and cellos, and basically all of their songs are about resistance to Roman imperialism. And some of them are like, it's a little bit fantasy-ish. It's like folklore. But some of it are stories that are archaeologically grounded. And they're trying to uncover some of the histories of resistance to the Roman Empire that have gotten kind of lost. And then they're using this band as a vehicle to tell that story. And it also includes, kind of like Celtic indigenous wisdom about seasons and cycles and harvests and relationship to the natural world. And, I wanted to share it because those of us who are students of decolonization often study the Americas and study Africa and forget that Europe was colonized. And one of my comrades, Carlos Saavedra, does this course that is about deep movement history, that he talks about how a lot of native cultures say that like you can't understand history if you're just learning the last couple hundred years. You need to study in periods of 500, 5,000, 10,000 years to understand these bigger cycles. And I wanted to mention it now because we're living in the collapse of an empire, and broadening our perspective in that way can be really useful. And, one thing that Movement Generation likes to say is that on the left, we tend to think that empires fall and like leave democracies in their wake, but they don't. They implode and leave feudalism in their wake, usually. And that, I'm not an expert on the history of Rome, but if the basic story is, empires overexert themselves, they push their resources out externally in the form of the military, and then upwards towards the aristocracy. They neglect the actual people and the civilian infrastructure of the people who live there. And as a result, they're incredibly vulnerable to shocks to the system. And so Rome was vulnerable to whatever the stories are of like invading Germanic tribes or whatever. Right now, the coronavirus is one such comparatively actually minor shock that's revealing kind of how brittle our calcified institutions have become, that were once like a lot more malleable structures of domination. And when we look towards the future of climate change, we're going to be embracing or bracing for, much stronger, more consistent shocks to those systems. And so this record doesn't necessarily give us answers to what to do with it, but it may help you channel your anger about it. There's another, if you don't want something so aggressive, they also have an acoustic record that is like a lot more sort of, if you're interested in Celtic, like ancient Celtic music, it's a pretty interesting.
See, I actually like that. I don't know anything about it, but I know I like that sonically when I've heard stuff like that. So I might dig that. Yeah,
it's cool. And it's very original. It's very distinct. So the band is Elvite, which is spelled, if you're just listening, Eluveittie.
That's awesome. I will actually check that out. I'm going to listen to a little metal because of you, my friend.
Nice.
That's pretty big of me. That is definitely a testament to our friendship.
I appreciate your open-mindedness.
You just watched a Michael Brooks show video. Subscribe to get them all. Why wouldn't you? Don't be foolish. Click subscribe below and become a patron as well. Patreon.com/TMBS. Thanks, everybody.